Well, looks like people are trying to get the next console war started a little early. Can't say I blame you. We can only hear the same BS reasons why random gamer A believes console A is better than console B so many times before it starts to get rather ridiculous. And as interesting as it can get, I think it may be a little too soon to really be talking about the specs of consoles we really don't know all that much about. However, for the sake of this video, I'm going to assume that everything that's been said thus far is at least somewhat true. So please, take what I say with a grain of salt, as I don't really have the culinary skills to prepare the meal I'm about to cook. The most talked about thing right now seems to be the graphics specs of Microsoft's new console in comparison to the Wii U's. If these specs are true, then it appears that this time they aren't going for the big leap in the next gaming generation. If this information is true, then the first question we would have to ask ourselves is, why would Microsoft do this? There's a lot of answers to this. Maybe they're following in Nintendo's footsteps. That is, they noticed how successful Nintendo was this gen with a console that wasn't that much more powerful than their previous. Though I think if this assumption is true, then they may be making a mistake. I would have to assume that the reason Nintendo did that was because they weren't going to repeat the same actions as they did last gen, of making a console that, as most people know, was more powerful than the huge success that was the PS2, yet still not being all that successful. And the reason I say this is a mistake is because unlike the GameCube, the Xbox 360 was a big success. So if Microsoft is trying to follow in Nintendo's footsteps, they may want to be very careful how they go about it. Mimicking Nintendo's actions without truly understanding why Nintendo made such actions could easily backfire on them. Then again, they may also be doing this because instead of mimicking what Nintendo did, they're actually trying not to mimic what Sony did. In other words, not trying so hard to make the most powerful console only for it to not work out the way they wanted or needed it to. Then again, if they plan on releasing their next console before Sony does, then they can't easily make the most powerful console next gen, as Sony could simply take what they already did and simply do it better. Remember guys, in a way, Microsoft is still somewhat new to the console market. The success of their first console didn't involve some type of smart business tactic of them studying how Nintendo and Sony worked and then using that knowledge to dominate over them. It was a lucky break by one of their franchises turning out way more successful than they expected and them taking that franchise and running with it. But anyway, a lot of people seem to be rather disappointed with Microsoft's choice GPU, assuming of course this is in fact the GPU they'll be using for their next console. To me, this, if anything, is just another reason why, at least to me, it's a bad idea at this point in gaming to let graphics be the #1 thing to get people excited. Hell, most of the stuff said about this now would have sounded silly before. It looks like our own knowledge of these things seem to create our own disappointment, as most of us back then probably weren't all that tech savvy, and hearing someone say, well, I was going to get a Sega Genesis, but I found out it only had a Z80 at 4 MHz and a 320 by 224 pixel resolution, so I said fuck it. We'd sit there scratching our head wondering what the hell they were talking about. But I think a lot of people should have seen something like this coming. I honestly believe that we may be close to the end of the whole oh boy new console better graphics thing. It's possible that Microsoft may realize that all they can do, as I said in a previous video, is take something that we've already played and make it look better. If that's the case, then spending a lot of money on a powerful console is a big risk and they may not want to take such a risk, in which case I kinda can't blame them. They may actually be trying to take their hardcore fanbase and get them to accept Kinect as the new way of gaming the same way Nintendo did with their main fanbase. But just like I said, they have to make sure they know why Nintendo did what they did before repeating their actions. Especially since, as we can see, it looks like Nintendo's gonna once again try something new. As far as disc formats go, again, assuming what was said is true, Blu-ray should have been expected. It was either that or digital distribution, and I think we can all agree that while it's still used here and there, it's much too early for that to become the main format. Though I'd laugh my ass off if next gen Sony says, Blu-ray? Who the hell still uses that played out format? It's all about the holographic versatile disc now. 6 terabyte capacity. Get with the times, Microsoft. Hey, it could happen. It looks like there's not really much left these companies can do to wow us gamers, which may explain why, even this gen, Sony and Microsoft have been spending more time advertising the features the consoles can do that actually have nothing to do with gaming. Next gen, as far as consoles go, is really looking to be a repeat of this gen for Microsoft. And honestly, to me, of the 3 consoles we have this gen, the only company that can repeat their actions and still expect a positive outcome is Microsoft, especially since a lot, not all, but a lot of their success comes from multiplex. Nintendo had to change it up because it wasn't guaranteed that the fanbase they drew in this generation would actually follow them to the next. And if the Wii U turned out to do exactly what the Wii did, then the outcome for Nintendo may have had a better chance of being the exact same as that of the GameCube. And Sony seems to be keeping their mouth shut as far as consoles go, which is probably the smartest thing they can do right now, and concentrate more on their handheld market. Though they may not be able to stay quiet much longer, especially for this year's E3. If Sony repeats their actions with their next console the same way they seem to have repeated their actions for their handheld, well, I'll let you guys fill in the blank there. And if the rumors that Microsoft isn't going to allow used games is true, and while most of us know they're kind of the reason why a lot of the BS like PSN Pass is happening, and I'm sure a lot of you may disagree with my next statement, but we could all end up saying goodbye to Microsoft in the console war. And say hello to, I don't know, let's say Atari makes a surprising comeback, and then crashes the market again, then laughs at all of us and says that was their main intention as they run away laughing with our money. It could happen. In the end, guys, I don't think something like a graphic card that doesn't meet the expectations of a PC gamer will be the downfall of Microsoft. I know it's strange hearing this from someone like myself who could care less about the Xbox anyway, but while I didn't really care for this gen's Xbox, or last gen's for that matter, who's to say I won't care about next gens? Gamers jump around. Some have gone from Nintendo to Sega to Sony to Microsoft. Who's to say where we'll all go next? TurboGrafx 16 2, anyone? Okay, I'll stop now.